Well, hello out there. So you're Lee.
And you're Irene, and together we're Wellness Unfiltered.
Yay!
Welcome, everybody. This is the very first episode of Wellness Unfiltered with Lee and Irene, and we are coming to you live from a very secret cabin location, and we are so glad to have you here with us.
Finally, Lee, we have been talking about doing this for years because I know we're both just so done. We are so done with the sugarcoating, done with the greenwashing, and done with the wellness gaslighting.
Exactly. And this show is all killer and no filler and no hidden agendas either, because we just want to talk about the clinical facts. We're going to put in a bit of common sense and the unfiltered truth about what you're really putting in and also on your body. So this is going to be a weekly podcast on wellness and beauty. And we want to bring the heat to our industries too. We're going to shine a light on what's going to help you in your day-to-day life, you, our lovely listener. Irene and I and our unfiltered guests will bring you real, raw and refreshingly honest chats about wellness minus the woo-woo.
You bet. And I've been told I don't have a filter, and I definitely have some thoughts on the world of beauty. And I also have some bones to pick and some myths to bust. Together, we have a combined 30 years in health and wellness and beauty, especially the natural kind. We just love what we do so much. It's so dynamic and so interesting, and change is constant, but so much fun.
It sure is. So I'd like to start with a little intro all about the force of nature that is sitting right alongside me, drum roll, Miss Irene Falcone. So about 15 years ago, do you remember we met when we were both single parents and we were kind of just trying to make ends meet? And back then, remember you were working at Universal and I was at ABC?
Yeah, of course.
And do you remember you used to send me those free movie tickets so Tams and I could go to the movies?
I always used to sneak my allocation to you.
You did. And I used to give you little music albums too. Sorry, Clive, if you're listening, that's my boss. We're still in touch, actually.
Thanks, Clive.
Thank you, Clive. But sort of, yeah, back then we were kind of just two young parents, weren't we, supporting each other through those. It was pretty tough times back then. But fast forwarding on to today, I feel like we've really cheered each other on through wins and losses and everything in between. And we've both seen our dreams take shape. While I personally, started blogging and I did my blog Supercharged Food and built my website Supercharge Your Gut, you went down another road and you became this amazing global entrepreneur, buying and selling major businesses, racking up every award and leading the way for ethical entrepreneurship. I do remember actually, I was in Central Station one day and I was just waiting for my train and I looked up and I saw this beautiful beaming face across a massive billboard in the station and I thought, wow, that's you, Irene. And it was such a proud moment.
Thank you, BWX, for buying those billboards for me.
And fast forward to today, we actually genuinely just live around the corner from each other and we're still super close friends, which it really is a full circle moment, isn't it?
It really is. And I just almost have to pinch myself when we think about how far we've come over the last 15 years. It's actually longer.
Yeah.
I think it's more like 20 years now.
Yeah, I feel like some friendships are just meant to be hard. And looking back on those really simple acts of kindness that we did back then when we were both struggling and building our businesses, and now we kind of help others live healthier, more conscious lives. And I don't know about you, but I definitely feel a big sense of achievement from that.
You know what's interesting? I don't know if I've ever told you this, but in that business that I started after I left Universal Pictures, your Love Your Gut powder was my number one selling product.
Was it?
Yeah, at least 3 or 4 years in a row. I remember we would just get these deliveries and I would tell the staff not to put it away on the shelf because I knew, just leave it out the front because I knew they would all get packed directly into orders.
Oh, that's so awesome. I love how our friendship is so authentic and genuine. And boy, has it stood the test of time.
Oh, Lee. So what can I say about Lee? First and foremost, your blog. You had a blog and it was back in, I'm going to say 2008, about then. And it was literally the only really good, genuine food blog at the time. And I was obsessed. In fact, I was such a fangirl of this. And I would bookmark it. I would shop off it, I would cook off it, and it's really I don't know if I've ever told you this, Lee. It was your blog that inspired me to start my blog.
No.
It really was. I thought I need to do a blog similar to this, but on beauty products. And that's what made me start the living toxin-free, actually it was toxic-free back then, living toxic-free in the city, which ended up going on to become my first business. But you really were the inspiration for that. So thank you.
Oh, I'm blushing. I need one of your natural concealers. Can I borrow one?
Yeah, I've got one in my bag. Why don't you have one yet?
I need one.
But beyond the blog, I think you have written 10 book. I've gone to at least 10 book launches, surely.
Yeah, you have. In fact, I just handed in my 12th book.
Wow. I mean, you are such an inspiration. Your books are amazing. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you. That's such a sweet intro. I'm blushing.
Oh, and one other thing about Lee that you might not know that I hope I'm allowed to say, but did you know Lee's actually a singer? She used to be a singer in a band. I actually walked past 2 ARIA awards on my way to the cabin.
Awkward. I actually played congas in a band, the Love Monkeys, back in my heyday.
You are a multifaceted, multi-talented Virgo, Lee.
I'm definitely a Virgo.
So here's a breakdown of each episode. Each week, we are going to take a dive into what's popping. So the news, the views, and the controversies of the week in wellness and beauty, that's all in the top of our minds.
That's right. And we'll also help you help the men in your life with our Womansplain segment. So let's be honest, many men are notoriously, let's say, strategically avoidant of their own health, right?
Totally. They will research a car battery for 6 hours, but they won't take just a few minutes to look after their health. So every episode, we're just going to give you a few simple ideas to get your man a little healthier and looking his best.
Then we are going to have a lovely listener zoom into the cabin with You're on Speaker.
Oh, can't wait. Oh, and then we finish with my favourite segment, which is a rant or rave. Mostly I love the rant part of that. It's going to be so fun, of course, unless you're doing something dodgy out there.
Well, I've always wanted to say this. So without further ado, let's talk about what's popping. So we're kicking off our very first Wellness Unfiltered episode with our What's Popping segment with one of my very favourite guests so far. Haha, it's you, Irene.
I'm a cheap guest, aren't I?
Well, you're also a true pioneer when it comes to natural ingredients and clean beauty. And I really want to chat to you today about lifting the lid on something almost every single Australian person uses, and that is sunscreen. And lately, it's been such a hot topic in the news, but it's also, I think, a really confusing one for people.
Oh, it's super confusing. I've actually made a sunscreen before, and the process is really complicated, and there is a lot of red tape, and there's also a lot of confusion out there in the market.
Yeah. I do want to pick your brains today about natural ingredients as well, and I want to talk about the transparency in beauty, and I might also have a few cheeky questions about the Australian regulatory landscape as well. Yeah, we'll have another leading sunscreen expert coming on in a future episode too, which will be really good. So we'll do a part 2 of this. But if you really want to know what's in the bottle and why some sunscreens have recently been taken off the shelves, and if you want to know how to choose products that protect both you, your skin, and the planet, I think this episode's going to be really illuminating. So slip, slop, slap your headphones on and let's get into it.
What do you want to know, Lee?
All right. Well, firstly, just with a little bit of background, I actually had a melanoma a few years ago, removed from my forehead, which was a super scary experience. And so that made me really aware of the harshness of our Australian sun and the need for us to sort of wear sunscreen. What I want to know is, there's been so much controversy around sunscreens lately, which you talk a lot about on your social media. Can you give me and your listeners a rundown on what's going on and what's the inside goss?
Oh, well, there's a lot going on with sunscreens at the moment. And where do I start? I guess it all kicked off with this choice files.
Like the X-Files?
Yeah, there's a lot going, like the Epstein files, but for sunscreen, there's so much going on. So choice, I think they do it every year, but for some reason, and they always catch these big brands of sunscreens out for not meeting the SPF rating that is on the pack. And I'm sure that this has happened in the past, but for some reason this year it's really been picked up. I think it's been picked up because it was such a iconic brand that was underreporting their SPF rating, being the Ultraviolet, and Ultraviolet's just really popular. And I think the founder came out and really defended her SPF rating, and then it was found that it wasn't hitting the SPF rating. So I think that's why it got more media this year than it has in the past. That Ultraviolet sunscreen had a base formulation that was used across a whole bunch of other sunscreen formulations in Australia, and what ended up happening is that everybody that used that base formulation had the same issues. So it wasn't Ultraviolet or their brand in particular, it was their base formulation. That base formulation came out of a WA manufacturer called Wild Child. What I find really interesting about that is this Wild Child manufacturer was getting the sunscreen SPF tested overseas, which I actually didn't think was allowed, because when I was making my sunscreen, I had to get it SPF tested in Australia through an Australian technique. Do you know how they do it? They actually burn your skin. They actually put the sunscreen on, and then they actually burn. I think they pay university students like $10 an hour to burn their skin, and that's how they do the testing. But anyway, they do this overseas, and so I guess the overseas company that was doing the SPF, I mean, I think it's a bit dubious sending it overseas to do it, because I have actually tested US sunscreens in Australia before, and I've seen BB creams come out of America that say that they're SPF 30 or 25, and I've had them, because even though you don't need to go through the TGA for a BB cream, you still need to hit the ACCC packaging laws, which says that it needs to be what it says. And so I was getting some BB cream tested, hoping to get an SPF 30 or 25, which was on the pack in the US, and it came back as an SPF 3. So I just thought that was a really interesting example of how getting something tested in Australia and how different that was getting tested overseas.
Oh, wow. I cannot believe that. I mean, there are things that happen in my industry that are a little bit similar, whereby they get their regulations in Australia and then they take the products over to China and change everything. What other sort of controversies in that area?
Oh, there's more, Lee. There's more. So there was that. Then after that, there was another article that came out that there is a sunscreen manufacturer in Australia that was manufacturing this private label sunscreen. But they were putting the exact same formulation into loads and loads, and I think it was about 50 different brands. And so 50 different brands were using exactly the same formulation. So I'm not talking about the base formulation in the other example. This is the exact formulation, and sometimes in exactly the same shape bottle and exact same bottle, but just a different sticker on the front. So each of these all were sharing the same TGA number. So I'm pretty sure that's not allowed. I think the TGA have come back and clarified on if or if not. I think the TGA came back to clarify whether or not that is allowed or not. But can you imagine having 50 different brands all with exactly the same product with the same TGA number? But more importantly, people were paying different prices for it. So, you know, like someone's charging like one amount for exactly the same product. That's why I'm not a big fan of private label. Actually, a couple of those brands reached out to me to stock them as well, and I just felt like it just didn't feel right, because I knew that, you know, they were all the same product. In that example, Mugu, the founder of Mugu, actually had those tested, and he came out to the media saying that it was an SPF 50. He came out to say that he had it tested and they didn't meet the SPF 50 rating either.
Wow.
So that's the second controversy. The third and fourth issues that have been in the media recently about sunscreens is the chemicals in them. So the TGA came out and said that how much of these chemicals should be allowed, because they haven't been tested for, you know, being disrupting hormones and all of those sorts of things that some chemicals do. And so that came out in the media, I think just before Christmas. Then this week there was an article in the Courier Mail in Queensland and the Herald Sun here saying that someone had saying that someone had got hold of all of these emails through the Freedom of Information Act, and another ingredient which I can't pronounce, but I talked about it on my socials and I put the article up. We can link to that in the show notes. But this particular ingredient it's banned in 20 other countries and is in sunscreens in Australia, but has not been tested for safety for vulnerable people such as pregnant women and children. So this chemical is in sunscreens marketed to children, and it is potentially not safe. And the outcry is that we weren't told about it.
It's just unbelievable. I mean, so certain sunscreens are being pulled off the shelves for, safety reasons, contamination reasons, dodgy ingredients. How do we choose a legit sunscreen? I mean, what would you recommend?
Well, I think the important thing is that we must wear sunscreen. So I think that's really important. We must slip, slop, slap. You would know better than anybody. There's a few things going on here. We need to choose a sunscreen that we can trust the SPF rating for. That's really important. I believe that all of the sunscreens that were affected by that choice-based formulation, they've all been pulled now, and I think that we're pretty confident that our SPF ratings are going to meet what's in the bottle now, because there's been so much light shed on it that every sunscreen supplier I have spoken to, every brand, has retested and tested to make sure that it does meet their claims. So I think we can be confident about that. The other issue is the chemicals. Whilst we don't want to scare anyone away from using sunscreens, we absolutely don't. I mean, a chemical sunscreen, even with those chemicals, is still better than no sunscreen at all. But if you do want to avoid chemicals and you want to go and use a formulation that is natural, it's important to know that in Australia, a natural sunscreen without the chemicals that use a zinc formulation needs to meet the same SPF rating as a chemical sunscreen. So if you choose a mineral natural sunscreen that says it's SPF 30, you're going to get the same SPF 30 protection as you are if it was a chemical-based sunscreen, because they both need to be tested and they both have to be TGA listed. As long as you've got that TGA number on the pack, you can be rest assured that it did need to go through that vigorous testing in Australia. So the choice is really yours.
So would you say, like, with the TGA regulation umbrella, I mean, that sounds very official, but is the system working in favour of consumers, or do you think it kind of makes life tricky for smaller, more natural brands?
Oh, no, I think that the TGA I think it absolutely works for consumers. I am actually pro TGA. I certainly don't want them to be writing me any letters for this, but I mean, I obviously love natural sunscreens myself because, I am an advocate of natural products, but I'm first and foremost an advocate of wearing sunscreen because you don't want to get burnt.
I think that people avoid sunscreens altogether because they're scared of the toxins sometimes, aren't they?
Yes, so for those people, just pick a natural sunscreen and know that you are going to be protected. Yes, there are small suppliers out there that are selling just zinc or zinc oxide, with some shea butter and saying that that's sunscreen. To be honest, I would avoid those. I don't think anybody should be wearing anything on their skin that they're thinking is getting some protection without the TGA listing on it. There's something else really important about this as well that I need to bring up, in that this does annoy me. If a product is TGA listed, you don't need to list the ingredients on the pack. You only need to list the active ingredient. So you might see a sunscreen that says, the active ingredient is 22% zinc oxide, for example, and think that that's like a completely natural sunscreen. But actually, you really need to type that number into the TGA website. You'll be surprised what it brings up. It brings up 15 other inactive ingredients as well. So that's just a really good trick to double check. So when I'm selling sunscreens, I don't take the ingredients list off the pack and list that, as whether or not it complies with my policy. I have to go to the TGA website and check.
So there's a place you can go and look up the ingredient.
It's so easy. Just type in the TGA number on the box, type it into the TGA website, or just into Google, type in the number and then write TGA next to it, and it will come up with the full list of ingredients.
I love that. I do have another question, actually. this is sort of towards the environmental angle of things. We hear about damage to coral reefs and marine life, and I know that you can get some reef-safe sunscreens. What I want to know is, do they actually live up to the name and the hype?
That's a really interesting question, actually. So first and foremost, there are some chemicals in some chemical sunscreens that definitely destroy the coral. And if you are going to be swimming in the Great Barrier Reef, you should be avoiding those for the safety of the environment. I'm going to get in trouble for saying this. The natural sunscreens using zinc oxide refer to themselves as being reef safe. But through my work with other organisations, environmental organisations, there's a little bit of a question mark around whether or not zinc oxide is actually safe for our coral as well, and titanium dioxide and how that affects our coral, whilst probably not anywhere near as bad as those chemicals. I'm not sure we can technically call them reef safe. The jury's out on that. I know you can technically say it on the box, and we do, people do, but I'm not sure if that's really been 100% verified.
Interesting. There is something else I wanted to ask, actually. It's just about SPF. Obviously, you've got SPF 10, 15, 30, 50. What is SPF, and how do we and what sort of rating do we need on that?
Back when I started and when I was making my sunscreen, you couldn't get an SPF rating higher than 30 for a zinc oxide sunscreen, and now it's been great coming back into the industry and seeing all these great SPF 50 sunscreens out there. So the SPF rating refers to how much of the UVB rays are filtered. This is really going to surprise you, but an SPF of 50 plus filters out 98% of those UVB rays. How much do you think an SPF 30 would filter out? If a SPF 50 filters out 98%, what do you think an SPF 30 would filter out?
Okay, so this is girl math, but I would probably say about 80%.
That's what you would think, wouldn't you? You'd think there'd be like a gap between the 30 and the 50.
Yeah.
Okay, so get this, an SPF 30 filters out 97%. So you're getting 1% less filtered out from the gap between 50 and 30.
So it's not that much.
It's not that much at all. The difference, people think, I'm not going to use the SPF 30. I want the 50. I want the best protection. But at the end of the day, you're talking about 98% being filtered out versus 97%. And your SPF 15 filters out 93%.
So does that actually relate to how long the sunscreen will last on your body, the efficacy of it? So you know how when you have a look in the back of the label and it says reapply every 2 hours, I sometimes wonder if that's just a marketing thing, you know.
Oh, so you use it up quicker to buy more?
Yeah.
No, not technically. What's really important with all SPF is that you must always follow the directions on the pack. What's really important is you must always reapply frequently, wear a hat, and also, covering and seek shade as well. The pack often says reapply after 2 hours because that's about the time that it gets sweated off. And if you are swimming, it's important to reapply often. But definitely in that case, it depends on the exact formulation. So always when it comes to when to reapply, follow the directions on the label.
Wow. I mean, that's been so interesting. I loved having you as our first guest. Thank you.
Anytime, Lee. So welcome to the You're On Speaker episode. And Di, you're our first caller. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a little bit exciting. I don't know that I've come first on a lot of things. But anyway, thanks for setting up this podcast and giving us an opportunity to ask some questions. I've actually got a question around prebiotics and probiotics. So I read a lot about it. I hear a lot about it online, but I actually don't know what the difference is between the two or the frequency that you should be having either or. And there's a lot of different messages online. So I was curious whether you could offer some insight on that.
That is such a great question for Lee.
Over to me. Hi, Di. How you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Lee. Thanks for answering the question.
Yeah, no problem. Well, I do get this a lot in my nutrition clinic, actually, and it is really confusing. Like, gut health can be quite complicated, but really, at the end of the day, it's quite simple. And if you're looking if you're interested in learning more about prebiotics and probiotics, I like to think of the gut as this beautiful ecosystem, and we call it the microbiome. And within it, you have like trillions of different bacteria living all together in this one ecosystem. And, you know, when you're really healthy, your microbiome's nice and balanced and everything's running smoothly, but sometimes it can get out of balance. And some of the things that throw that off are things like smoking, antibiotics, a really high sugar diet, that kind of thing. So we want to keep the good and the bad bacteria nice and balanced. And the way that we do that is by eating more probiotic rich foods. So when you think about probiotics, they're like the reinforcements that you bring in. And there's good bacteria in foods that you can eat, things like yogurt and kefir and sauerkraut. You've probably heard of all of those, use them already. They're like basically the good bacteria or the seeds, and they are the ones that are really helpful for the good microbes in your gut ecosystem. So that's what they are. And then the good microbes in your microbiome have to be fed. They're like little babies with their mouths open. So that's where prebiotics come in. So they act as the fertilizer for your good bacteria. And they are things like your non-digestible plant fibers, things like inulin and chicory root or resistant starch. They're the ones that go into your body and feed all the good bacteria, and the good bacteria love to munch on them. So if you think of foods like onions and garlic and oats, they can really help fuel the bacteria that is already in your gut and help it thrive and multiply. So when you think about like the differences between them, the probiotics are your good bacteria in the gut, and you want to populate them and have them thriving. And then the prebiotics, they don't add new bacteria, they just nourish and support the bacteria that you already have. And then I think you also asked about how often to take probiotics and prebiotics and things like that. You can get them through your food, and I think it's important every day to have some kind of probiotic and prebiotic rich food. So some kind of yogurt and lots of fiber, and onions and asparagus and chicory, and those kinds of foods are really good. So if you are having them daily, I think it's really good to keep things going and to keep things moving. And then once your probiotics, your good bacteria flourish within your gut, you'll notice that they start to produce things called short chain fatty acids, and they can really help to strengthen your digestion, and that kind of bolsters your whole immune system and dials down inflammation in the body. So it sounds very simple, but they are they're my kind of tips in pre and probiotics. I've got a recipe and a shopping list in the show notes too. I'll drop that if you like.
Okay, fantastic. That's actually such a clear answer, and I can't believe I didn't know that for so long. But now I'll be thinking about little babies as my bacteria, or the hungry babies eating the prebiotics. Thank you for that. Actually, while I've got you both on, can I ask you another question, Irene? If I'm on a natural health journey and or a natural beauty journey, when I'm thinking about beauty, should I be looking for natural products? Or if I am looking for natural products, how do I tell the difference between natural and not natural? Is it something as simple as the number of ingredients on the bottle?
Oh, that is such a great question, and right down my alley. If you are on a health journey, you must always think about what you're putting on your body as much as you're putting in your body. So absolutely, you should be looking at natural products. And when it comes to natural products, often less is more. So yes, a long ingredients list, whilst might not mean that the product's bad or has any toxic ingredients in it, it is quite confusing. And I just really love simplifying things. But I think what to look for are the words on the front of the pack or certification logos if you don't want to go through and read the full ingredients on the back of the box. So anything that says 100% natural, legally you can't say it's 100% natural if it isn't. So that's just a really great way to know that what you're putting on your skin is going to be natural. But if you want to go one step further, I think it's really great to look for certification logos. So there is lots of certification logos, but anything that says that it's certified natural or certified organic, you know that that's also going to be a natural product that's full of goodness as well. I think when you're out and about shopping, some things to avoid are, logos that just say cruelty-free or logo or made up style logos that say green, or just packaging as well that just says natural. If it just says natural or made with natural ingredients, that doesn't necessarily mean that the rest of the ingredients aren't natural. So it's all a little bit in the wording, and hopefully that helps.
No, that's fantastic. That's actually very, very clear. Thanks, ladies. That was so helpful.
Thanks, Di.
Thanks, Di.
Great to have you on board.
How good was Di? That was such a great question.
Yeah, both of the questions were really good.
Yeah,
I love that.
I didn't even know all of that about pre and probiotics. I know we need them, but I didn't know all the details. That was such a good visual with the babies.
The babies,
the
with their
hungry
mouths
babies.
open.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's great when callers call in, isn't it?
Yeah, she was
love getting
great.
their feedback and getting their questions.
Where was Di from? Let's ask our producer. Where was Di from?
She's from Bondi.
From Bondi. Di from Bondi. Thanks,
from
Di.
Bondi.
That was great.
Thank you, Di.
We should get more people ringing in. Lee, if someone wants to call in with a question, how do they contact us?
Yeah, they can just go onto our Instagram account, Wellness Unfiltered Lee Irene, and send us a DM.
Okay.
And get them on the line.
Yeah, great. And if you don't want to get on the line, just send us a DM or add a comment to our page with a question, and we'll just answer it.
Yeah.
I'll ask Lee if it's a wellness question. And if you want me to answer any beauty questions, be
You're
happy
the
to do
beauty
that.
queen.
The green
Irene.
Green
queen.
Irene. Clean. The clean Irene answers.
It's time for a public service announcement. Time to womansplain, where we gently help the men in our lives with some good old information, also known as unsolicited advice. We have our very own man right here in the cabin. Justin, I need you to take your producer hat off just for a second and grab a mic.
I'm here, Lee, and I'm afraid.
Okay, so do you have a burning health question for us, Justin?
I sure do, but I'm asking for a friend. He's called Bustin, and Bustin wants to know, he's skinny everywhere except his gut. How does he get rid of it?
Bustin. That's very original. Okay, Lee, over to you. This is definitely a Lee question.
Okay, well, bustin' is probably a lot of men over 40. And ladies, because I know you're the ones listening right now, this one is for you too. You came here to quietly absorb it and then somehow accidentally work it into a Tuesday night dinner conversation. And I see you and I respect you. So let's get talking about bustin's gut. So here's the thing that most people don't realize. That specific shape, skinny everywhere, but just kind of like a pot belly, that's actually not a general weight problem. That is a visceral fat problem. And visceral fat is the kind of fat that sits deep inside the abdomen and it wraps around the organs, and it's metabolically active, which kind of sounds really impressive, but that's actually the problem. It's hormonally disruptive because it can drive inflammation in the body, and especially for men over 40, it's usually tied to a couple of things. The first one is elevated cortisol, and the second one is declining testosterone. Stress and age, it's not about laziness and it's not about willpower. It's actually about biology here. And now here's how Bustin. Here's how Bustin starts to shift it through nutrition. First of all, my first piece of advice with this is to cut out the liquid calories. And I don't just mean alcohol here. I mean, obviously alcohol is processed by the liver as a toxin, and it responds by prioritizing that job over fat burning, so the belly stays. But also it's things like the sugary drinks, the fruit juices, and even those sports drinks. They have got to go. And secondly, and this is the one I want to really sort of casually mention over dinner, ladies, for you guys, Bustin definitely needs to add more protein at breakfast. So not the cereal and not the toast. I'm thinking things like eggs, Greek yogurt, smoked salmon, anything like that to sort of stabilize the blood sugar early. That is going to really help, because when the blood sugar spikes and crashes all day, the cortisol rises, and cortisol actually loves depositing fat right there in the belly. And then the third piece of unsolicited advice for Bustin is all about fiber, specifically foods that are going to feed that gut microbiome. legumes, oats, fermented foods like sauerkraut, bananas, apples with skin, garlic, onions, leek, asparagus, all the ones that I talk about a lot. The gut microbiome directly influences how visceral fat is stored, and this newer science is really compelling.
What about exercise? You didn't mention the gym.
No, we can leave it right there if you want.
No, I don't think we should.
Oh, yeah, exercise. Yeah, definitely. I would definitely recommend incidental exercise, taking the stairs. You know, if you're going into work, park further away from the station, go for an evening wander after dinner around the neighborhood. And finally, Buston, he does not need to starve himself, because extreme calorie restriction actually raises your cortisol further. So what Buston really needs to do is consistency over intensity. So it's all about those small strategic shifts, sustained.
Thanks, Lee, and thanks, Irene. I understood all that, and I actually listened to it all. The only thing I don't really understand is what is a legume?
That's a really good question.
I don't know what a legume is either. Is it a bean?
Well, you know what a legume is and how it grows. Do you know it grows in pods, just like us? It grows in a pod, in a podcast. It grows in a pod, and it's actually actually a seed. So things like beans, lentils, peas, and peanuts, they grow in the pods. You know the little pods that they grow in, and they're pretty much staple in our sort of diet. And things like common ones are things like lentils, chickpeas, black beans, kidney beans, soybeans. They are all legumes, and what's really good about them is they're a good source of plant-based fiber, iron, and usually have a lot of B vitamins in too. So yeah, they're part of a healthy diet. Recommend them.
Thanks, Lee.
So right now, let's get ranty. This is going to be my favourite segment, I can tell. Who's going to go first? You got a rant.
I have a rant.
Over to you, Lee.
Okay, well, today my rant is all about staying in your lane. It's got me really ranty today.
Oh, I'm going to love this.
Yeah, this is the expertise creep, you know? It's a global epidemic, you know?
I do know. I'm just trying to see where you're going with. Are we naming names?
Oh, yeah, maybe. You know, this is how I feel about it. I understand nutrition, right? That's my lane. I love it. I've spent years studying it, and I'm practicing as a clinician. That's what I do day in, day out. But do I know the law? No. Do I know how to litigate a case in court? I can't fix your car. I make a really bad coffee. And I'm okay with that because I know what I can do. But somewhere along the lines, success has become a free pass to be an expert in pretty much everything, don't you think?
Absolutely. Only if you're an influencer, right?
Yeah, you've built a following. Congratulations. You can launch a health food product. You were a lawyer, and now you're putting ingredients in a so-called wellness product that wouldn't even stand up in your own courtroom. You know, a lot of these products have mountains of excipients, preservatives, unnatural colors. In this case, I just won't let them.
I know exactly who you're talking about. So as long as you write a book or you're a public figure, you can make a product, call it whatever you like, put whatever you want into it. Is that where you're going with this?
I'm going with that. And, you know, I just feel like that's not expertise. It's really capitalization. You know, they're jumping on this gravy train, toot, toot. But this is the danger with that, I think. People really trust you, and they buy the products because of you, not because they know anything about the product, you know. And I find that a lot of these products don't have the efficacy with them. A lot of people are just putting their names to things that are proprietary blends that really are not helpful at all.
Yeah, I've got a bit of a thing about the whole private label thing as well. Just slapping a name on it, or, you know, slapping a brand on it if you are an influencer, or really just even if you're not, just every man and their dog slapping their name on, I want to create this or I want to create that, and they're not really creating it.
I agree. So here's my message from my rant today, okay? Find your lane, love your lane, and keep fixing any potholes in that lane. Because if you veer across the highway into someone else's lane, you're not really helping anyone. You're actually a traffic hazard, and people can really smell that inauthenticity. Stay in your lane.
I love that. Like, I agree. But you know what I do think? I think people are catching on to to this as well. I think so many people know now they can smell it a mile away.
I agree. I feel like they're very intuitive as well, and they know when they're being marketed to, and especially a product that just has no beneficial value to you and is really highly expensive as well.
I don't know exactly what product you're talking about. I'm going to look that up.
Look it up.
I will.
So that's all for episode 1. Yay! We've covered sunscreens, we've myth-busted Bustin's gut, and we've met the lovely and intelligent Di on speaker.
If you love the show, please do us a massive favour and hit that follow button. Leave us a 5-star review, please, 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 or a 6-star review. It really does help us fight the big industry giants. I love nothing more than fighting the big boys and keeps this show nice and independent.
We love fighting the bros. And for full research and my nerd notes from today, head to your favourite podcast platform.
See you next time.
Bye.
Wellness Unfiltered is a production of Clean Nectarine Proprietary Limited and Supercharged Food Proprietary Limited. It is hosted by Lee Holmes and Irene Falcone with editing and technical support by Justin Smidmore. You can listen to each episode on your favourite pod platform or on Substack at wellnessunfilteredpod.com. Wellness Unfiltered is for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute medical, health, legal or financial advice. The views expressed are personal opinions of the hosts and guests and do not represent the views of Clean Nectarine or Supercharged Food. This podcast does not establish a doctor-patient or other professional relationship. Always consult a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your health or treatment.